Hi, good afternoon or good evening, Thomas. Welcome again for this exciting webinar or podcast series. All right, so Thomas, today's topic is very interesting, and we have been talking about project program, but there's another hot topic going on: supply chain disruption. And we have seen this problem in the car industry, housing industry, and many other industries. How they're getting negatively impacted by this supply chain problem going on. It's now months and months. So today's topic is transparent supply chain in post-pandemic world. I don't know if this is already post-pandemic, but yes, we have seen one phase. Hopefully, that was only phase, a big phase. And now is the time we have to think about, hey, yes, we have seen the disruption because of the pandemic and China and zero COVID policy and many things are going on. That is disrupting a lot on the supply chain. What do you think?
Yeah, so first of all, I've been involved in supply chain and logistics as a project and program manager for a long, long time because if you are, let's say, building a new data center and you need all the parts and the software and whatever to bring together, there's a supply chain behind it. Even if you have just provide services, there's a supply chain behind it.
Yeah.
In previous times, most trainings were on site, which was a nice thing. So the trainer had to come from somewhere, and if he was stuck on the train, we had a supply chain problem. So yeah, and basically now it's blown up. Supply chains are everywhere, and the whole economy is really now depending on supply chains that we get our raw materials, our goods, our services from somewhere on the globe, and it is cheap enough to be transported or transferred, which always takes some time. Though, if you see you have a bulker ship coming from China to Europe, maybe that's 6 or 8 weeks, depending on which kind of ship and how many stops they have. And yeah, you wouldn't put in some, let's say, some raw goods that can rot easily in
Yeah.
this container. That's a problem. So regarding the pandemic, pandemic, as you said rightly, disturbs the supply chains globally, and dramatically, because not only in China but everywhere for some time, there were lockdowns, and lines were disrupted, and crews were not allowed to get off the ship. So I know that biker crews were on ships for months. They couldn't go out, and I
Yeah.
think and still 90%, of the goods that we have in supply chains globally are on ships, and container ships, or you have ships like LNG tankers or tankers with oil or whatever. A lot of things are going on, and yes, now still China with its policy of zero COVID, they lock down whole cities, they lock down a harbor, they lock down companies, and so certainly there is a disruption in this supply chain. It's for China overall, maybe it's not so critical, as the bulk of their business is still in the country,
Mm. Yeah.
and they are not so much dependent on. Well, they are dependent for sure, but not so totally dependent on exports, like Germany is. Which yeah, hit Germany very well after uh, pandemic
Yeah.
hit the supply chains, but also, now sanctions hit supply chains too. So we lost, as Germany, the economy of Germany, we lost the Russian market,
Yeah.
and about 700,000 Germans were working in exporting to Russia alone.
Mm.
And so maybe now they're exporting elsewhere or they're doing something else, but for them it was really a shock for over half a year to withdraw from that supply chain business. And if you look at supply chains, it's not a modern thing. Whole economy, whole German German, a whole human relationship developed through trade. You know, we find artifacts of Romans or from the era from Lebanon in Great Britain, which were shipped there by ancient ships. You know, and
Yeah.
so trade between centers was there 10,000 starting 10,000 years ago now, and now it developed into a global supply chain network, which basically nowadays is also very much automated. You know, we have which we didn't have maybe 20 years ago, but now we have the digitization. We know where the goods are. We have geolocation. We have GPS tracking, and you know, in the big shipping companies, you can see the monitors showing where every container is located and what's happening with them. We have monitors in containers which are, let's say, which are filled with hazardous goods, you know, with chemicals or whatever. And we had some fire on a container ship last year, I think, when one of these containers which had a cooling, but the cooling broke down, and so well, this container went up in flames, and then, you know, the other containers are also somehow um, affected. So you have monitors, and the monitors are connected to a central hub globally, and they are monitoring that, and they can easily identify a problem and act on that. And it's always a problem. Every day there is somewhere a deviation. You know, the bigger deviations you read about, like the big ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal and blocked it for only a few days, but it was enough to lose billions of revenues and additional freight and whatever in insurance, you know, and so the ships they're waiting to enter the Suez Canal were lining up, and it took weeks until this blockage was really opened up. So with the pandemic, with the sanctions, with the what I would call the deglobalization. So
Yeah.
until some years, you know, before pandemic, we increased globalization. We increased. There were trade agreements closed, you know, and people wanted to trade, make trade easier with each other. Well, that's no longer the case, you know, because the counter movement was always sanctions, and the sanctions are really now covering a lot more of trade partners than had been, let's say, 10 years ago, you know. And, you know, in the end, sanctions only enable a let's say a black supply chain, because you can buy everything in Cuba, which are 50 years under sanctions. And if I know that Obama smoked Cuban cigars, although they are sanctions for the US, so it's it's just a matter of cost and ability, and yeah, sanctions is an instrument to hurt the normal flow of goods, but you know there is always humans, and especially traders are very innovative in finding ways around. It's like water flows every way, and suddenly you understand, okay, here I have a hole in my rubber boots, you know, and you only know it when it rains.
Yeah, yeah. So look, this is a pandemic, as we know. We talked about a lot of stoppage happened because that production was stopped, halt, or we have seen the problem with the chip, car manufacturing companies. They are literally struggling. I think they're still struggling because the required chips are not available, and you don't get the car. You want to buy a car, you have to wait for 6 months, something like
Yeah.
this. I literally have to go to the many stores, and everybody saying, no, you have to register and wait for your turn, and you're lucky, and we can't give you the date. So, from customer point of view, it's not a good thing. And the problem is, the middlemen also see that opportunity, and they increase the price as well. Now they're saying, hey, we'll give you the car, but you have to give 7,000 more or 12,000 more on the market price. Then anyway, so you know Who's losing out of this? Actually, customer. Who's losing out? Of course, business is also losing out. So what can be done to minimize the impact? I don't know. We have a solution or not?
Well,
Do we have? But what
it's
else can we do?
yeah. In this disruptive world, what we have seen now is the pandemic and other disruptions, like I said, sanctions, but also we have global warming. You know what happens
Mm,
with that, and if you look at river shipments, so in Germany we have the River of Rhine, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
very important, not only for Germany, but for Europe. It flows from Switzerland across France, Germany, Netherlands, and the River of Rhine it's a heavily used waterway for shipments of heavy goods, like coal or like chemicals. We have the whole Swiss
Yeah.
chemical industry, Sandoz, and what you have in Basel, and you have BASF in Mannheim in Germany. So a lot of these factories that are using a lot of raw materials, they get it through
True.
shipments over the River Rhine. And now, global warming, we had the 40 degrees centigrade for weeks and no rain. The River Rhine was losing water, and they
Yeah.
had to reduce the volume that could be carried by one ship, because if you
Oh,
carry
yeah.
more, the ship goes deeper. And some ships, so they measured it, some ships at some they only had 30 centimeters below the keel.
Oh,
And so you see that is it is a mathematical calculation. How much load can I get in, so that I can pass this this part of the River Rhine. And there were several of that. We have okay, and same is with other rivers on the world. Uh, so we
I
also
think
have
Mississippi had the same problem.
yeah.
River Mississippi. Yeah. I know that.
I read the same thing about the Panama Canal. Yeah, they're also lacking rain, and the Panama Canal for wide areas is following a riverbed and a
Mm,
lake and everything. And these rivers, they were low on water, and so they had to reduce the uh, the load of ships running through the Panama Canal too. So that's happening. So
so, can we find a
overall,
solution?
how to find a solution? Well, it's I just want to say there are lots of possible ways that can disrupt your business as usual, you know.
Mm,
And so the way how to answer to that is you have to get more resilience
yeah.
in your business or in your project. So and in resilience, so there is a good Harvard Business Review article talking about how resilience is observed in biology, with our skin or with something, and what basic principles we can transport to business, to projects, or whatever.
Mm,
And so they have identified 6 attributes, and 3 of them are structural. So how can you organize your business or your project? And the first thing is redundance. If you have one shipping line to get your stuff to be redundant, so you just create a second one, and
mm,
or a third one, or be prepared to open more than one option. So you don't have a bottleneck. Then also the second structure attribute is modularity. Make sure that you can exchange parts of your supply chain or of your organization, and that you can replace it by others. Or if they defect for some reason, maybe you have a factory in Ukraine
mm,
blows up. So
yeah.
now what do you do? If you are modular, you can more easily contract the factory, let's say in France instead, so that they supply something. But if you have only one big factory doing everything, you are not modular and you cannot easily replace. The smaller the unit is, and the better you know the interfaces, going in, going out of that factory, the easier you can replace it. So, give you an example of that. It was in France. So in France, they have a famous brand name where they sell mustard of different sorts,
Okay.
mild mustard. So, and we go to France every year, and then we go into the supermarket and we buy mustard by mile because it's one of the best, you know.
Mm.
And this year we were there, and there was no mustard. You know, people in Germany, we are chasing toilet paper, and
Oh.
the French were chasing mustard. And after we were there, after a week, they finally had mustard, but it was German mustard from a German company. So then I read what's going on, you know, and through the Ukraine war, they were sourcing some of their mustard seeds from Ukraine, and they didn't get it. And then the second disruption was global warming, because the bulk of their grains were coming actually from Canada. But Canada, this area where they grow the mustard seeds, experienced some drought, so they didn't have this volume of seeds harvested. So you know, two things came together, but they were resilient or modular in that point, that you say, okay, we have high quality mustard, but it's German mustard. So the French didn't like that, but you know, maybe this company, which is now called Kühne, is a German company, and they were brought into supermarkets and with high prices, you know, and yeah, and then that's the modularity, you know, can you exchange parts or not? And the third attribute for the structural resilience preparation is diversity. So if you have, as a unit, as a company, if you have diverse products, you know, one product might fail or might break down because of something, supply chain, you know, and if you have other markets, you know, you are better off than if you only can sell to the Chinese or to the Russian market. So that's diversity. Three things: redundancy, modularity, and diversity. And think about your structure. Think about your life. You know, if I'm a project manager and I only know what Scrum is, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not very diverse. I'm not redundant, and I may be modular, you know, but um, uh, I have to know more. You know, I have to know several ways how to do my project, how to be successful, and how to convince my customers. So these are the structural attributes. And then there are behavioral attributes. Say that one thing is also clear: you have to be adaptive, which means you have to observing what's going on the outside of your inner business, you know, on the market, on the geographical things, you know. You have to be sensing, and then from the sensing, you have to think about it and respond, maybe preemptive if you can, you know, and prepare for that. So if you start reacting to a supply chain crisis, once it is there, you know, you will pay a heavy price. But if you have prepared yourself, you know, if you have observed the changes and predicted them correctly, and you could prepare yourself to find another provider, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Being adaptive. So, and we know that from Agile, you know, it's adaptive. Being adaptive is not an invention from Agile, but it's something humans used in the last 10,000 years to survive. You know, you have to be what they also call prudent or mindful. You know, you have to be not only adaptive and sensing, but you also have to be sure that you think about before you decide, and that you take different options, and you have to have maybe a process how to solve problems. You know, so being prudent means not only having knee-jerk reactions, not only reacting automatically based on your emotions, but really think about it. You know, involve your brain, maybe involve several brains, you know, to make sure that you cannot have a complete picture of the situation, but that you have picture situation that is a little bit more confident to you than just understanding there's something bad happening. And the third behavior is not to isolate yourself, but to be embedded in the environment. You know, you have to have partners. Maybe
Yeah.
partners can help you. The partners can help you with redundancy, but they also can help you with modularity. So
Mm.
if you have, if your car, if you need a chip from Taiwan, and then maybe what I think Mercedes did, they took chips from elsewhere, from Bosch or whatever, from Germany, and put it in instead. Not 100% the same thing, you know, but enough to roll out the car and to sell the car and bring it to the customer. So the three behavioral attributes: being adaptive, prudent, and embedded. So an issue, it's like every model, you know. If you think in these model terms, in these six categories, then you find always things in your structure and in your behavior where you should look at and maybe change.
Yeah. Yeah. So things like when we talk in the risk management, as project management, we have risk management. So as a project manager, can you or a project manager do some better job by identifying this as a risk and we have alternatives? Be ready for such a especially currently now it's going on to look for hey this is the contingency and the supply we are expecting from Mexico or maybe from Taiwan is cannot
Yes.
reach on time, then okay, what is the price we have to pay? We have to pay extra price because locally made, and the purpose is to get the work done. You get a local from the local shop, pay 4 times the price, but that's how you have to do sometimes. But you need to
Yeah,
highlight to your sponsor and steering committee, hey, this is the risk and current situation, supply chain is going on. The mitigation is we will
exactly.
procure from the local market, and which is extra cost.
You're right. It's a part of risk management. On the one time, that you say, "Oh, this could happen, and these are my mitigation measures. I plan for, I prepare for, plan B, whatever."
Yeah.
Um, but also, what is, you know, if an event happens, you know, you have a change to your current scope, schedule, budget, whatever, you know, and you have to deal with these changes. And the new thing is that many of these changes don't come as requirement changes from the customer. You know, he said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I want something different," or a technological change because I have difficulties with implementing this kind of chip in that. You know, but these changes come from the environment, the outside, and that's why you need to be embedded in your environment. You know, so it's of utmost importance that the project manager looks out what's happening in the world out there. And let's say you are a project manager in construction. You know, you
Mm.
have to go to construction conferences to talk to your peer and to understand what's going on and what are maybe behaviors or measures you could take in your project to avoid critical situations. Because again, and you know, you must avoid surprises for yourself and for your management, and that's your job, you know, to give security to everybody. And your management, your sponsor, your customer would ask, you know, how do you give me security if you surprise me with bad news every
Mm.
meeting? Have to avoid it, and it's only the case if you widen your horizon, if you are embedded in a way of others peers who might have better ideas and share them. That's why you go to conferences. That's why you look at webinars and you know, although conferences are getting more frequent now, again after Corona, still, you know, there is a lot of courses and webinars available on the web that you can do from your home
Mm.
office.
Yeah. Yeah. So as when you're dealing with your customer, you need to be transparent upfront. There's a problem happening. You're trying to resolve it. This is a mitigation you're applying, but at the same time, they're aware that this is happening. There's a possibility that the house they're expecting in before Christmas now going to be in January, February because of the supply chain problem going on. So being upfront, this is not in your hand. If you can control environmental factor, if you can control, why not? If not control, you try your best with your, alternatives
Yeah.
and work out your solution. And there may be cost impact, time impact, but the stakeholders are aware of what is happening, why it's happening, why the cost going up, why it's taking time.
And you have to be clear. Nobody can predict the future. Something will happen, and
Yeah.
if you look at the next 3 months, the next year, whatever, something will happen which is totally unexpected. The black swan or even the gray swans are more dangerous when we
Mm.
know this could happen, but we neglect it. Yeah, the gray swan. So and 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 hence, we as a project manager, we must develop a mindset that is accepting uncertainty, and
Yeah.
we must be able to swallow uncertainty, still convey a kind of security to our stakeholders. We are the buffer between the uncertain world
Yeah.
and the certainty our team and our customer and our bosses need and want and are happy about. So sometimes your certainty will blow up. But anyhow, sometimes something will blow up. And so that's why if you are able to look out in the future, to network, to be embedded, to be modular, all the things about resilience, you are much more ahead of others. Because others, what do they see from your project? If you look at your team, they have the scope and they have the tasking and the schedule and they're working according to that. They don't need or they don't like disruptions or
Yeah.
uncertainties. They want to have a certainty.
Yeah.
And if you come once a year or whatever, they okay, we have a big problem, we have to change the schedule. They understand and they follow you because the rest of the year, you provide certainty. But if you come every week and say we have to change the schedule, they will. Well, first they will try to help, and then they will quit. That's the normal thing. You can, if you have a high attrition in your company, it's probably because you created a complex environment for them. They don't feel safe, and they
Mm.
think they change their mind every week, and I don't like it. Maybe I go to a company which is more organized. So that's the thinking behind it. But it's basically that you were not able to buffer the uncertainty and to give them the certainty. And that's the same in supply chains. You don't know what happens, but if your supply chain is resilient, you have modular and redundant parts, whatever, are adaptive and watching the environment, you are able to absorb a lot of these, let's say, gaps in between plan and actuals, and employ the predetermined actions. Uh,
Yeah.
a good example for that, which just came also to my mind, is outside of project method, is look at the fire department. They don't know. They are called to this place. There is a big fire, so whatever. And then here they go. The first thing they do is to analyze the situation,
Yeah.
and they have a toolbox for that. They have a process for that. And then, first thing is save lives.
Mm. Yeah.
It may be burning like hell or whatever, but first thing is to get people out of that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so on. And they have a big car with hundreds of tools in that car to be prepared for any usual situation. So they are also reducing the uncertainty of the world out there. There's a fire, what's happening, and trying to buffer that uncertainty to provide a certainty for their team, but also for the people whose house is on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about tools and in supply chain. And nowadays we're talking good digital like tools. This can give you transparency, what is happening, where the goods is, the trucks is, the GPS system is there, which is supplying the data information on the real time basis. That can also help many organizations to have a better supply demand or supply chain system.
Yeah. Definitely. So when my customer was Panasonic in Europe, they uh, I had a shipping problem because many of the finished goods came from Japan over 6 or 8 weeks shipment until they arrived in Hamburg, and were put on trucks and whatever, put in the warehouses. So they didn't know for 8 weeks what's going on, where the stuff is. And though they started to employ digitization of their
Yeah.
containers, so
Yeah.
that they have a tracking device on the containers, and they know in every moment where the ship is, and it's a difference if your ship arrives this week or the week after next week.
Yeah.
Because you have commitments and they have to make payments, and there are insurance companies involved. So these logistics guys are heavily under stress if they don't know what's going on. And that's what I said, you cannot know everything what's going on, but this uncertainty of the reality is buffered by you, and the people, the sales guys or whatever, the shops who want to sell the Panasonic stuff, they just want to have a date.
Oh, yeah. Because as you correctly that certainty, the customer looking for certainty. If
Yeah,
not, then they will either lose the interest or they go to another product.
right, right.
Okay. All right. So anything else you like to talk about how to build the transparency? I think we talked about tools, resilience, modulation,
Yeah, yeah.
steady
Well,
building.
it's you know the concept of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics applies here well. It's if you don't do anything to control and to organize something, it will all disperse in a mass.
Yeah.
So you have also in supply chains, you have to employ some management control, some visibility, transparency, in order to make sure that the energy is put on that spot where you
Mm.
need it. Energy means now the supply of goods or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's always good to invest a lot in supply chains, because supply chains, if they are working fine, if you don't have a lot of disruptions or payments to be made because of damages, it helps you a lot to do the rest of the business, the value chain to the client.
Yeah.
So and one thing that companies also like Panasonic did, they wanted to own the supply chain from the mill, from the mine, to the end customer. So they
Mm.
really owned mining companies, which brought in the metals they need, and they were reducing the complexity of communications between companies and the supply. They still had a supply chain, but they owned it
Mm.
from A to Z, and this was a huge benefit, but also a huge cost. But they
Yeah.
said, okay, with that cost, I have the less entropy, less spread of unknown things.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Good discussion, and I think good topic as well, the burning topic, which is impacting lots of businesses,
Yeah,
and hopefully people find this discussion interesting. And feel free to, people can share their thoughts, what they are doing, what they are, what's the impact of supply chain this going on, and how they are dealing with this situation, so that other people can also benefit from their discussion or their experience.
yeah. I will have a webinar to students of the Notre Dame University in Lebanon, in Beirut,
Okay.
Lebanon,
Mhm.
end of this month, and it will talk about supply chain, and
All right.
also these aspects, which we talked about, some more aspects,
Mm.
and yeah, it's uh, sometimes it's the concept of time is also very very important, because if you have in supply chains, you have the sustainability requirement now, and everybody must be sustainable. You have this cyclic production, so you not only produce something, but also you have to take it back and recycle and hopefully refurbish the whole thing and bring it back into the cycle. So that's one requirement. But you see many spots where the concept of linear time in supply chain, growth is no longer the main concept. So we have a kind of cyclic concept. No, it's in cycles, and so we especially let's say, look at water. Many production in mining and agriculture is depending on water, and water is a scarcity in many regions of the world, especially with global warming. And so recycling water, and bringing water back to be available as fresh water again, it's also one of the big tasks I think we will see happening in the world.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it from us now. And as usual, we'll continue to bring new topic and new discussion. So till that time, thank you. Thanks, Thomas, and thanks everybody watching. Feel free to put your comments and contact us for anything we can help you with. All right.
Thank you all for watching, and again, give us a call or give us an email or a chat. If you have a question or comment, happy to discuss further. And yeah, because of my recent experience, stay safe. Don't get ill.
Very important. While COVID is not there, but COVID is still here. It's not left, still with us. So, learn from Thomas' experience and stay safe. Stay away from the crowd as much as you can. All right. Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.